Good afternoon to one and all present here on this auspicious moment on behalf of the management and faculty of Vale Tech Dr. RR and Dr. SR Technical University. We extend a warm and a hearty welcome to our chief guest Srimati D. Purandeswari, Honorable Minister of State for HRD, Higher Education, Government of India. Our guests of honor, Shri N. Ram, Editor-in-Chief, The Hindu, Shri Nainan Tarian, Assistant Vice President and Head Response, Bennett Coleman and Company. You must be the change you wish to see in the world, said Mahatma Gandhi. Amidst us is one such visionary, is none other but our Chancellor. His early days of vision is today our reality. May I now request the Honorable Minister and guests of honor to enlighten this auspicious moment by lighting the Kuttuvilakku. May I kindly request Dr. Srimati Rangarajan Mahalakshmi K. to welcome the gathering.
Respected Chancellor, Honorable Minister, respected Pro-Chancellor, Mr. N. Ram, Mr. Nainan, Directors, Trustees, members of the faculty, parents, students and members of the media. On behalf of Vale Tech, Dr. RR, Dr. SR Technical University and on my own behalf, I have great pleasure in extending a warm welcome to all of you. We are extremely grateful to the Honorable Minister for having agreed to distribute the Vale Tech Mahatma Gandhi National Merit Scholarships amidst her very busy schedule today evening. While launching this university, our Chancellor Dr. Rangarajan announced that as a token of its contribution to the nation building, and in honor of the father of the nation Mahatma Gandhi ji, the university would provide access to higher technical education to all sections of the society to the meritorious disregard of affordability, race or religion, caste or color. In translating this noble idea into action, Vale Tech Mahatma Gandhi National Merit Scholarships was instituted. In collaboration with the Hindu, in collaboration with the Education Times are awarded. The promise made is being kept, and this evening the Honorable Minister will distribute these scholarships to 128 students from all states and union territories. We are proud and fortunate that you are the Minister for Education and you are our jewel in the crown, Madam. I welcome you once again, Madam. Mr. N. Ram, sir, I am grateful to you for your steadfast support to this scheme and the keen interest in the implementation of the same. Sir, you have given us a number of times your valuable advice. Thank you, sir. We are extremely happy that you have been able to find time to be here today and also present the scholarships co-sponsored by the Hindu. Thank you, sir. I have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Nainan, who has been extremely kind and cooperative in participating in this scheme. We thank you, sir, for your presence to give away the scholarships co-sponsored by the Education Times. I welcome you all once again. Thank you.
We're all awaiting to hear from the Minister. And there's just one sentence or one statement that would give a huge profile about the Minister. It's from the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who observed that he was proud of her and she was an asset in his cabinet. So I don't have to say more, and I kindly request Madam to take the dais.
Chancellor Dr. Rangarajanji, Pro-Chancellor Srimati Shakuntalaji, Mahalakshmi, Dr. Ram, Nainan, other dignitaries on the dais, faculty and non-teaching faculty seated before the dais, students and parents. I think Ram has outlined everything, leaving nothing for me to speak. But I had actually decided, even as I was invited by Mahalakshmi and Dr. Rangarajanji to come here and address you, I thought probably I will speak on the emerging role of India in the globalized scenario and try to inspire the students before I could say anything. But Mahalakshmi, I think, had raised a couple of apprehensions that she had in her mind, and therefore I don't think I would be doing justice if I refrain from reacting to some of the thoughts that she had placed before me and before you. Just to start off with a very small overview of the education sector in India. 60 plus years after independence, I think we have progressed quite well enough. In the sense, if we look back to the year of independence, 1947, the number of universities were very few. There were about 20 universities, about 500 colleges. The gross enrollment ratio was 1%, and the teaching faculty strength was around 15,000. 60 plus years after independence, today, our education sector, particularly the higher education sector, has grown exponentially. We have about close to 500 universities in our country today, 21,000 institutions. We have a gross enrollment ratio in our higher education sector which is around 12%, and the strength of the teaching faculty is around 500,000 today. Having said that, the question is, can we get complacent over this exponential growth? And definitely the answer would be no. Because when we compare ourselves to the advanced countries, particularly when we look at the US and Canada, their gross enrollment ratio into higher education is anywhere between 60 to 70%. Gross enrollment ratio in the European countries into higher education institutions is around 40+%. Our neighbor China, whom we always like to compare ourselves with, is around 15%. And the international average of gross enrollment ratio is around 23%. Which means we are abysmally low when it comes to our gross enrollment ratio into higher education. But having said that, I must emphasize that access, equity, quality and relevance have been the cornerstones of our education sector in our country. Access we have always emphasized on because we believed in inclusive education. We don't believe in exclusive education. We want to give quality education to every child in our country, living in the remotest areas, belonging to the most marginalized sections, even belonging to the most economically backward sections of our country. There are some geographical disparities when it comes to access. We do have good institutions in some parts of our country and not so good institutions in some parts of the country. And here I must thank the private sector for having supported or supplemented the efforts of the government in the proliferation of higher education institutions, particularly technical education. And in that matter, I think South India is very strong where we had a lot of private sector institutions being opened and supplementing the efforts of the government. Having realized that there have been geographical disparities, there was a decision taken lately in the 11th plan that we should have central institutions, particularly good institutions in such states which do not have a central university, where the gross enrollment ratio into higher education is lower than the national average, which is 11%, where the literacy rates are low. And having said that, the Honorable Prime Minister had announced 30 central universities, 16 to be opened in states which did not have central universities, and 14 he called them, or he named them, world-class universities, which were later named as innovation universities. We are in the process of expanding or increasing the number of our IITs, our IIMs, our ISERs, which is the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, our NISERs, which are the National Institutes of Science, Education and Research, our NITs, our IIITs. So there's a huge exponential expansion that is happening in higher education sector. And the Honorable Prime Minister himself, education being very close to his heart, he said that the 11th plan can be called the education plan. Where we were in the 10th plan, the gross budgetary support given to education was around close to a little over 9%. In the 11th plan period, the gross budgetary support that has been given to education is over 19%. So this speaks of the commitment of the Government of India towards making education accessible to the children. Educationally, economically backward children, yes, we would want to support them. We do not want any child not entering a school because of compulsions at home, which is why we have the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in place. How good it is being implemented is a question that we can always discuss at a later stage, but definitely along with the midday meal scheme, which is one of the components of the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we have more children coming into schools. Our attendance has increased, our retention has increased, and we have been giving incentives to children who belong to the backward sections also in terms of fee waiver, free books, uniforms, so that they can come into the portals of our school. In the higher education sector also, we have numerous schemes brought forward by UGC, AICTE in terms of fee waiver to children, particularly the girl child. Ram just touched upon the number of girls who are coming into higher education institutions today, which was not the case some time ago. But we have fee waiver for a single girl child and several other incentives for children belonging to the marginalized and backward sections to come into our higher portals of education. We also are looking at supporting them through education loans, where the interest could be subsidized and could be borne by the government, so that we do not want to see, it's simply with the conscious that we do not want to see any child turned away from the portals of higher education for lack of resources. So this is what we have been trying to do in terms of access. Quality, there are various aspects to quality. We could deal with infrastructure, we could deal with faculty, we could deal with the laboratories, the libraries. These are all part of the infrastructure. And the most important thing here is that there's a huge responsibility that lies on the shoulders of the teaching faculty. Some time ago, when I was interacting with an industrialist friend of mine who's been a great success in his area, he said that he was educated in a panchayat, in a rural school, which did not have the bare minimum infrastructure in place, which he said, when he said that, he said he did not even have a classroom in his school. He was taught by the teachers under the trees. They used to sit in the hot sun and learn from the teachers. But he says, here I am today, most successful. And with great humility, he says I owe this success to the foundation that was laid by the gurus of my time. I think this is the reason why the old adage goes, Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We have always put our gurus on the same pedestal as the lords. We have revered them, and it is for the simple fact that they are responsible for whatever we would be in the future in our lives tomorrow. Teachers, it is said, are the windows for any child to look out at the world. Teachers would leave an indelible mark on the mind of the child and on the society at large if the teacher helps a child explore the latent talent in the child, help the child to bring that latent talent forward, and give confidence to the child that the child can tread higher plateaus of success if they do go forward with confidence in their latent talent. That is what the guru or the teaching faculty should be doing, and we have no iota of doubt that our teaching faculty do live up to that. Yes, we do have a shortage of teaching faculty today, probably around 25%, and the government has been trying to address the faculty shortage, has announced the the pay review commission has also been announced, where the salaries have been increased for teachers. This is to bring in good teachers into the profession of teaching. And here may I be allowed to say that it was the IT boom that happened at least a couple of years ago that actually deprived the education sector of good talents from coming into the teaching profession. We had children who were graduating with very good marks, whom we were looking forward to, wanting them to come into the profession of teaching. But we had companies also coming into the campuses of universities and institutions and immediately absorbing them into their companies, giving them good lucrative pay packages, which was, I feel, one of the reasons. Now I'm not attributing this or considering this the sole reason, but has been one of the reasons of depriving the education sector of good teaching faculty, and also for the erosion of research that we have been seeing of lately. But however, I don't know how many would agree with me, but as the Minister of State for Human Resource Development dealing with education, I would say thanks to the global recession or thanks to the global meltdown that we are having a brain gain that is happening now. There was at one point of a time when it was believed, when IITians were stepping out of the campuses, there was this funny saying that was doing the rounds that IITians had one foot in India and one foot in Air India. But today, I think they are stepping or putting back the other foot also into India. We are having our best brains wanting to come back, and we invite them. We invite them into our universities, into our institutions, to bring with them the rich experience that they have had with the exposure to the West, to bring their knowledge coupled with experience into our institutions and universities to enrich our students here, our children here, who are to shoulder the responsibility of an emerging, growing India, which is going to emerge to be the superpower of the 21st century. Quality, when we talk of quality or relevance, quality and relevance could be interrelated in fact. We need to talk of how much the universities and institutions are actually interacting with the industry. There was at one point of a time lots of research happening within the portals of the universities, but after there were organizations set up probably with the Ministry of Science and Technology, that there was a little disconnect between research, where all research was probably going to CSIR and not much of research was coming into our institutions, because of which we did not have research happening in our institutions and universities. And today, if we are to say there is a disconnect between what the market requirement is and what the universities are doing or institutions are doing, I think we can attribute a portion of it to the disconnect between research that is happening, or the disconnect between probably organizations like CSIR and the universities. We need to bring in research back into the portals of our universities today. Mahalakshmi had just said that we are not allocating sufficiently enough for research. When we compare ourselves to the developed countries, there is about 3 to 4% of their GDP which is actually set aside or allocated for research. In India, the percentage that we allocate for research is unfortunately less than 1%. But yet, I think the government can take pride in the fact that 80% of whatever meager allocations are being done for research is public funding. We need to have the private sector come in to do a lot more research, and it is again here that I appeal to the industries: come to the universities, come to the campuses of the universities, give your research to our students so that they could work upon them, give you the solution, so that there is a win-win situation for both. Your questions, your problems are solved, and the students would be tuned to the market requirements. It was Swami Vivekananda who once said that education has no relevance if it does not relate to formation of character, expansion of knowledge, and also to develop a view, an attitude to view life positively. That, I think, should be the essence of education in today's world. Having said that, Jawaharlal Nehru also said that a university should not be just a mill which churns out graduates, but it should rather be a breeding ground for ideas, and it should be a ground where confluence of various cultures do happen in the campus. Today, I am happy to see that so many students from across the country, from the length and breadth of country, 128 of them have received their scholarships, the Mahatma Gandhi National Awards today, to a tune of 6.3 crore rupees by the Weltec University. And I think that shows, or that reflects, the kind of commitment that the management has towards trying to impart quality education and bring all those children to the university, so that there is a good confluence of cultures that happen in the universities, and this kind of sharing of cultures would definitely lead to building a stronger India tomorrow. Mahalakshmi had also spoken about China, has also said that China was able to do so much in education sector. But I would like to just draw her attention slightly to the fact that there is a difference between India and China. India today takes great pride in the fact that she is a vibrant democratic country. We may be a little slow, as we are called the elephant, but the elephant's strides are always very confident and they are very firm. So we would go towards our goal, probably in very slow strides, but definitely very confidently march towards what we ever want to go. I would just like to appeal, or make a small appeal to the students here. It is not the time for you to get complacent. The 128 of you who have received the Mahatma Gandhi National Awards, it is not the time for you to get complacent. Neither is it time for the other students to be happy that you have been admitted into very good universities, but it is time for you to realize that you have a greater responsibility as you step out of the universities and the institutes that you are in. The National Intelligence Council, which is an important arm of the Central Intelligence Agency of America, had said, not only in its 2005 report, but also in its 2008 report, that India and China are going to be the superpowers of the 21st century. They emphasized that probably accepting a few disruptions here and there, it is a fact that these two countries are going to be the super economic powers. Therefore, the thought or India aspiring to be a super economic power is not a distant dream, which is unrelated to ground realities. And this is not just what the National Intelligence Council had said, but there have been several reports who vouch to say that it is a fact that these two countries are going to emerge to be great powers. It is here that the young generation, the youth of our country, have a great responsibility. The transition period for any country, particularly a developing country, is very painful and arduous. India is at the transitional phase. She is on the verge of emerging. She needs you. You need to support her. So there is a responsibility on each one of you today who have received good education or who would be receiving good education at the cost of the country, to give back to the country, to support her in her transition phase, and it is very important that you support her. The GDP, the weight of the GDP is also now shifting from the west to the east. If you look back, the fiber production, which was at one point of a time, 2/3 of the fiber production was coming from probably America and Canada. But today, that fiber production comes from Asia. One third of the fuel demand today is from non-Japan Asia, which was at one point of a time the demand from the Western countries. The GDP has also, the burden or the weight of GDP has also shifted to Asian countries. If you look at China and Korea, their GDP growth has been anywhere between, China was 9.6 on the average and Korea was around 6.7 on the average for 23 years. And India is marching towards a sustained economic or GDP growth of 6.5%, which was what was said in the last quarter. But let us remember, it is India which has been, I would not be truthful if I said India was isolated, but India was insulated rather, but India did not feel the heat of the global recession or the global meltdown as much as did the Western countries. There was a point of a time when people mocked our highly regulated banking system and said we were too conservative. They mocked at us for having been very highly domestically consumer driven. But today, it is these two factors that have helped our country from not bearing the brunt of the global meltdown as much as the Western countries did. Today, India with a 1 billion plus population, an ever expanding middle class of about 300 million, a sustained GDP growth rate of anywhere between 7 to 8%, and a multi-ethnic, a multi-religious country, and a very vibrant democratic country, India can no more be marginalized or can no more be ignored. Here, it is here that each one of you student here who is seated before the dais would have to be our ambassadors, not only of our education system, but our rich culture. Wherever you go, you need to be Indian at heart. You need to be Indian first, and then you may aspire for greater opportunities in life. I cannot but refrain from recalling the words of Mahatma Gandhi when he said, "I do not want my house to be walled on all the sides, neither do I want my windows to be stuffed. I want the breezes of all cultures to blow around my house, but I refuse to be swept off my feet. I think that is what each one of you must hold close to your heart. You may go in search of higher opportunities in life to various countries, to alien shores, but you must remember that you have your roots in India, and we would be very grateful if each one of you could contribute your bit back to our country. When I said this in the United States, people asked me, they said, we probably did get our education there, but we got a good higher living standard in the United States. Why should we contribute back to our country? My answer to them was, you needed a foundation to build upon. The foundation was given by your motherland. If your foundation was weak, you could not have built the multi-storied buildings that you have today. So you need to acknowledge that, and you need to give back to your motherland. And having said that, I would just make a short reference to what Mahalakshmi said about deemed universities. She mentioned that we need to trust, the government needs to trust the private sector, and the private sector needs to trust the government. And Mr. Ram had said that there were probably a few black sheep in the lot, but that does not mean everybody is bad. Mahalakshmi said that the deemed universities are passing through what she called Agni Pariksha. And yes, I would say this Agni Pariksha is essential for those deemed universities who are really doing good to come out sound and strong, and thereby impart quality education to the future of our country, which is all of you seated before the dais. And having said this, I would like to thank Vailtech University for having given me this opportunity, for sharing the dais with Nainan and with Mr. Ram, and also for giving me an opportunity. Probably I might have gotten a little emotional, but definitely to share thoughts that have crossed my mind with all of you here. And I must say, it's always wonderful to address the younger lot, because we know that you are the future of our country and we have to depend upon you. And having said that, I once again thank each one of you for having given me this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Madam. Your inspiring and patriotic speech made us feel more proud to be Indians today. Thank you so much.